Hello, my name is Lee Presser. This is my show. I speak frequently to very interesting people. Some of these conversations are so exciting, so intellectually stimulating, I thought others might like to listen in. This is the reason we started recording Conversation with Lee Presser. Welcome to Conversation with Lee Presser. T.R. Carr is chairman of the Department of Public Administration and Policy Analysis at Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville. He's an active teacher and researcher. His focus is on public policy issues. Dr. Carr is currently directing Vision 2020, a project which is assisting Southern Illinois develop an economic strategic plan. Vision 2020 is a federally funded Department of Labor project. Dr. Carr was mayor of Hazelwood, Missouri from the year 2000 to 2009. Professor Carr, welcome to Conversation.
Glad to be here.
How long have you been working on this? Well, first, let me just let you introduce Vision 2020 and tell the people what it is that you're working on.
Okay. Vision 2020 was envisioned by the Madison Bond and the Mid-America Workforce Investment Boards, along with the Leadership Council of Southwestern Illinois. The process began back in 2006-2007. The Department of Labor has funded these regional innovation grants across the nation. And it was an effort to allow regions, geographic regions, to position themselves for future economic growth, future development, to train their workforce, and to position themselves for economic strength in the 21st century. This project was initiated, we got involved in 2009, and we're finishing the project now. So the project has lasted for us about 15 months.
It's all well and good to train your workforce to do a particular thing, but without the capital investment in that particular thing, your workforce doesn't have much to do. What is it that can be done to secure the capital necessary to create the infrastructure, or the factories, or whatever it is you're going to be making or doing, to make sure that capital formation occurs so that those workers can be put into an environment to do that?
That's exactly what Vision 2020 was intended to do. We were created, the grant was offered at a time when the economy is on the way up. Southwestern Illinois had experienced a $4 billion investment by ConocoPhillips to expand the refining capability. Prairie State's energy complex down near Marissa, again, almost some $4 billion. We began to look at the
What were they investing in?
In the new coal electric generation plant. And if you've been down, I would encourage you, anybody has a chance to drive by and view that facility, because it will generate a major significant force of electricity for Southwestern Illinois and across the state of Illinois. It really is an important project.
Inexpensive electricity is very important. I don't think people understand just how, if you have inexpensive electricity, you can produce products cheaper because it costs the manufacturer less in energy cost to manufacture that thing, right?
That is true. And there are issues with coal-fired plants, but at the same time, nuclear-powered plants, and people may not be aware of this, are reaching the end of their life cycle.
The ones that were built back in the 50s and 60s.
They were built, and they were licensed for a life cycle of around 40 years maximum. They're now achieving that 40-year mark. None are on the drawing board for new construction, and so the result is at some point in time those nuclear plants are going to go offline, assuming there's no new construction. Therefore, it's important that we have additional electrical generating capacity. One of the problems with California with brownouts, their population has grown, they've expanded, but they have not constructed any new electrical generating facilities in the state. Illinois, on the other hand, Southwestern Illinois, we have that capability. So we're seeing all of this investment. The result with Vision 2020 was say, okay, what's the next new thing? Where should we begin to focus our development in the future? Well, what happened in 2008, 2009, the wheels began to deflate on the economy. We're now dealing with unemployment approaching 10%. Businesses, instead of expanding, are looking at simply being able to retain their current market share. They're not expanding. So Vision 2020 came along at a time of economic retrenchment, we weren't dealing with expansion anymore. And so our focus then shifted. Our focus is what can we do to strengthen Southwest Illinois during this time, this economic downturn, and what can we do to position ourselves when the economy does turn in the future.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
okay, right. So what can be done? Now, of course, the downturn had to do with overspending in certain areas, especially when you didn't have money. So now I'm talking about realistically, where are we going to find real money to build real factories, to employ real workers so that they create wealth, so that then we can send it somewhere and have them send their cash back this way. Well, that's the objective, isn't it?
That is the objective. One of the issues that we begin to grapple with is one of the challenges facing Southwestern Illinois is the budget situation in the state is somewhat less than desirable. We're facing a major budget deficit of
State of Illinois.
State of Illinois is
right.
at $13 billion. The state of Illinois has no longer providing the support to public school, the K-12 system. Revenue sharing with the municipalities has been cut to virtually zero. So we cannot turn to the state of Illinois for financial aid.
Right. So you got to go to the private markets.
We have to go to the private sector.
And they're a whole lot harder crowd to deal with, aren't they? Because they're actually thinking about preserving their capital and making more of it.
That's true. And Southwestern Illinois, we were at one of our focus groups meeting, and somebody described Southwestern Illinois as having old, slow money, risk averse. There are resources here, but the resources are not especially eager to take risks, and that's been the history of Southwestern Illinois. So we have to find a strategy that will allow us to tap into the private sector to allow us to grow. Now, we identified a number of clusters that we believe have the potential for growth and that we can drive private sector investment, because municipalities don't have the ability, the state government doesn't have that capability. At the same time, the federal government with its budget deficit, and it's losing the capability to provide an infusion of dollars as well. Mm-hmm. It's a challenging time for the nation, for the state, and for Southwestern Illinois.
Mm-hmm. But a time really to strengthen the real economy rather than live off of tax dollars, to actually do like we used to do before the Depression, where private money actually was put together in an aggregate, and steel companies were built and electric companies were built. I mean, Edison, and General Electric was all built with private money. Mm-hmm. There wasn't any tax money that went into that. So perhaps this would be an opportunity for private entrepreneurs to actually see that, yeah, I can get in the door and actually start making some money if they think they're not going to be taxed to death.
This is the issue for Southwestern Illinois. Will we be able to pursue the right appropriate of clusters? Will we be able to pursue the right strategy in order for us to be able to see the kind of growth that we need? And we need private sector investment. Public sector investment will not solve our problems. It's going to involve private sector investment. And it needs to be a diversified approach to building the economy. It's not focusing on one industry, not focusing on one geographic area, but focusing on the entire 7-county region of Southwestern Illinois. Right. That's what we're trying to do.
I believe that August 20-something or another, Jerry Costello, the congressman from Southern Illinois, announced that Boeing was in fact going to be setting up some facilities at Mid-America Airport in St. Clair County. Discuss what that was about, and because although we're taping this in August, people aren't going to see this until late in September, early October.
The Congressman Costello had been working with Congressman Shipkiss, along with Senator Durbin, the governor, and with Mark Kern, the county board chair. The goal was to bring jobs and employment into Southwestern Illinois. They had been working with Boeing for quite some time, and this announcement had been on the drawing boards for several months. Mm-hmm. The decision was made by Boeing to move 75 machinist jobs to Mid-America Airport. A building already exists, and it really suits the needs of Boeing quite well. It's 75 jobs, Now, some people might say, well, 75 jobs seems to be a small number, and on one hand it is, but on the other hand, Boeing is trying to position itself for manufacturing capacity for the future. Boeing is seeking to build a new tanker for the United States Air Force. Boeing was in competition with Northrop Eads. That contract was initially awarded to Northrop Eads. Boeing complained. I'd written op-ed pieces for the Post-Dispatch complaining about the change in requirements. The Air Force, the General Accounting Office agreed. The contract was rebid. Boeing is now the only company bidding for that contract. If the contract is in fact funded, it will create significant new jobs for Boeing. And our hope in Southwestern Illinois is that some of those tanker jobs, and this is my conjecture, will come to Mid-America Airport, to that manufacturing facility.
For those who are not familiar with that area or have never been there, can you describe physically what it looks like? I mean, in terms of, is it crowded? I mean, do you have to stick this thing into a little area, or is there much room available?
No, Mid-America Airport, and it's kind of important to understand the history of Mid-America Airport. The extra runway was built in our efforts to retain Scott Air Force Base.
Right, back in the 90s,
Back in the 90s it was.
Right.
And
this was at a time when they were talking about closing a lot of bases, and Scott might have been on that list.
That's right. It was the BRAC, Base Realignment and Closure process, and Scott was on the hit list. But our congressional delegation, local officials, the private sector, we came together and we were able to find out what would be necessary to retain Scott. Scott Air Force Base provides 14,000 jobs to this region, both public sector and private sector jobs. Mm-hmm. The extra runway was critical. And when the runway was constructed, a decision was made to use it as a reliever airport, maybe for Lambert. At that time, Lambert was a hub for TWA, later American, but that hub status has in fact evaporated over time. So we have capacity there. The Mid-America Airport facility provides excellent industrial capabilities in southwestern Illinois. The building currently exists. Ample parking already exists, so they can bring in the machinery, do their work, and with access to highways, they can truck it. With access to rails,
right,
they can rail it.
Highway 64.
Highway
right?
64, and should anything need to be airlifted to a final assembly point, the runway is there. So everything exists. One thing to understand, I think, is that manufacturing, aircraft manufacturing, is diversified around the world. Boeing 787 Dreamliner, even though it's being assembled here in the States, parts are being built all around the world. And so diversifying their manufacturing capabilities at Mid-America really is a positive development for Southwestern Illinois. It brings in that private sector investment, which we desperately need.
Mm-hmm. Now, of course, Mid-America has also been the focus of some discussions of maybe Chinese imports and exports. At least at one time it was a discussion about that. I think now that discussion's really moved to Lambert too, hasn't it?
The discussion is continuing at both Lambert and at Mid-America. I do know that Missouri has created a commission, a China Hub Commission. Senator Bond, Senator McCaskill have gone to China along with Mayor Slay in an effort to promote Lambert as a center for flights from China, as a trade center for China. At the same time, St. Clair County, the Mid-America Airport continues its relationships and efforts to build a relationship with China as well. When the Chinese look at this area, they look at the greater St. Louis area. And so they will look at Lambert, they look at Mid-America, but it's all viewed as St. Louis. I know that Tim Cantwell, the director of the airport, is aggressively pursuing trade with China as well as aggressively pursuing trade with South America. But the future for Mid-America at the present time would appear to be in terms of manufacturing and as a trade center.
Is this runway, which was built for Scott, actually being used by the Air Force?
It's used as a reliever periodically when they have flights coming in. It's important. The old runway was shorter than desired, and it allows them the flexibility that they need. It allows them flexibility during inclement weather. One of the things that was important during the announcement, we had a number of F-15 fighters that were using the base as part of the staging area for some maneuvers. they were using the new runway, because the new runway is somewhat removed from the operations headquarters at Scott, and it gives them that kind of flexibility. So it was an important addition for our region.